1st of September 2021. And I think we have a quorum, still missing 2 board members. I'd like to, Julie and I agree, we'd like to ask Joe Dillard to introduce himself, or Julie, why don't you introduce Joe, who's here from Utah, apparently.
Yes, he's coming to us from across the country. We have joined a new group that will allow us to do better benchmarking for all of our KPIs, and Joe has represented us there. He is with us now, I think almost exactly 2 weeks, or is it a week and a half now, Joe?
I tell everyone here it's been 12 days.
12 days. So Joe is joining us from Hampton Roads Transit. He was recruited there by William Harrell, who I think many people here know and respect, to join the HRT team several years ago. Joe has an amazing background in diversity, in union negotiations, legislative affairs, policy. He's become an expert in transit, and he's risen very high at HRT. One of the positions as we're reorganizing here that I found a void was the ability to manage a lot of the communications and to develop the relationships with our community stakeholders as well as our elected officials. While we're running the business of transit, we lose opportunities to communicate and to advance some of our critical needs, and also to just be more aware of the diversity and equity of our service and how we serve our communities and how we hear from them. So I put out a position, and Joe responded to it, and we are so blessed and lucky that he did, because he's an amazing asset to our team already in taking off. And so I will stop there and let Joe say a few words and tell us his new title, because I started with a title that we kind of worked together on it, and he found the right fit. So Joe, if you'll take it over from here, you're on mute still.
Definitely. Thank you, Julia, and thank you, board members, Dr. Campbell, and et cetera, for allowing me a few moments. I know you guys have a busy agenda today. Me and Julie had talked and after the interview, and I agree with her that my original title, Director of Organizational Advancement, probably wouldn't fit, because when she used it for short, it would be DOA. And I didn't want to approach other people, letting them know that I was dead on arrival. So we came up with the Director of Equitable Innovation and Legislative Policy. As Julie's already shared, I came from HRT with a lot of experience, and my focus is going to probably be mainly internal. The good thing I can say about GRTC, what I've learned in my short time, is they have a family atmosphere. So when you're talking about inclusion and equity, when you have that base of people kind of working as a family, it makes it a lot easier than that business structured model. I also have background in legislative policy at the HRT level. We were instrumental in getting that dedicated funding in a different magnitude than what you guys have here at GRTC, but I'm interested and very excited to join the Richmond region. Dr. Campbell, I want to say I came to Richmond to get away from flooding, but last week, I guess it's following me around, but I'm definitely interested and engaged and excited to join the GRTC team. I've talked with some of the directors. I look forward to working with Julie, Cheryl, and the whole team to kind of advance the mission that we already have in place.
Well, we certainly, we appreciate your coming to us, Mr. Dillard. And are you back? Will you be back in town this week?
Yes, sir. So I should be back Friday. I'll talk with Julie if any of the board members want to meet. I'll be there over the weekend as well.
Yeah, you won't be here in time for the Cvta meeting, I guess, which is...
I'll be tuning in just like this. Yeah,
good. Well, it's important, because that's where our development is, as you know, for the region. Sir. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming to us. We look forward to for the work we can do together and for the continued development of this as an effective regional transit entity and a healthy company. Hi, George. Glad you're here.
Good morning. Yeah, a few technical difficulties, but I'm here.
Still missing Eldridge. Okay, we have no public comments, I think. Carrie, is that right?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. That's correct. No public comments, so I will read the statement for the public record. This meeting is being conducted virtually in compliance with City of Richmond Ordinance number 2020-093. The public notice, meeting agenda, and agenda attachments for this September 21st, 2021 standing meeting of the boards of GRTC RideFinders, and Old Dominion Transit Management Company were posted on September 17th, 2021 at ridegrtc.com. Per the meeting notice, all written comments received via email by Carrie Rose Pace prior to 5 p.m. on the day preceding a meeting were provided to all members of the board the night before the meeting, are read during the public comment period of the meeting by staff following the 2-minute speaking limit, and will be included in the minutes of the meeting. Also, per the meeting notice, this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. This meeting, I received no submitted comments in writing. This concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you for your continued negotiation of the hazardous swamp of public comment and opinion and relations, Carrie. You're a gift to all of us in this work. We need to have our minutes approved. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Could I have a motion to approve them, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the minutes of the August meeting be approved. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? They're approved. Thank you. And now we have a report from Adrian Torres, which looks interesting. Here we go.
Good morning.
Morning.
First up in the development world is RideFinders. So we have Vaughn Tisdale.
Hi, Vaughn. Are you muted?
Let's see. Good morning.
Morning.
How's that? Good morning, everyone. Okay. Robert Louis Stevenson said, "Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds you plant." On behalf of the RideFinders team, I'm pleased to share that RideFinders is the recipient of the Association for Commuter Transportation, also known as ACT, 2021 National Best Social Media Marketing Award in the category of Marketing and Outreach for our Celebrate Earth Day Everyday Clean Air campaign. ACT is the premier organization for transportation demand management professionals. So this award is deemed very prestigious in the industry on both national and international levels. What is noteworthy is the fact that no advertising or marketing dollars were expended in the design, development, or execution. All work was performed by in-house staff. While many of the messages conveyed in the same time period by others either began or ended with the phrases, "during this difficult time," or "in these challenging times," we deliberately chose to plant seeds of hope, inspiration, and motivation through our social messages about the power and impacts of green commuting and environmental actions designed to appeal to people's value system. The call to action encouraged individuals and/or business participation and engagement, and showcased RideFinders personnel walking the talk. We maximized our available social media platforms and strategies that are easily suitable for replication by other agencies, and also strengthened our evolving image as a community builder. And as your award-winning agency that is an integral component of the GRTC family, we are committed to promoting and supporting this culture of excellence throughout the entire GRTC organization. And that completes my announcement.
Well,
Thank
thank you and congratulations for this. That's wonderful. Good. Ms. Torres.
Yes. Next up, we have the micro transit study. Just wanted to provide an update for you guys. We have with us the two consultants who are on board, Nick Britton with Michael Baker and Jessica Alvarez with Foursquare. This is going to be a very high level update. The approach that we are doing is the existing conditions, best practices, and then we'll be doing outreach as well, and then recommendations and next steps. So with that, I am going to share a PowerPoint, and they're actually going to go through the PowerPoint. All right. Nick or Jessica, if you want to kick it off.
Yep, this is Nick Britton. Thank you all for time this morning to go over this process. Very exciting topic, I think, because it's something fairly new that GRTC will be looking at. And I think it's one of those things that fills a niche that doesn't necessarily get met a lot of times. So Jessica and I will be going kind of back and forth on some of these slides, but just as a quick agenda, we'll be looking at the scope of the project and the different tasks that make up this agenda, or sorry, this project. A real quick discussion about schedule, which includes talk about the survey that we're planning on launching in October, and then we'll talk about those next steps, and we'll open it up for questions. And it should be fairly high level and straightforward. So if you do have any questions in the middle of it, please feel free to let us know. So I will turn it over to Jessica now.
You're muted, Jessica.
Yeah, is this better?
Yes, yeah.
I have to unmute two different devices apparently. So as part of this project, we're going to start off answering the question, what is microtransit on-demand service? Which seems kind of a weird question to ask, but what we found working with other agencies is every agency has a different view of what microtransit and on-demand service could be and how it could be operated. As you can see here, we've kind of looked at the existing providers throughout the Richmond region and kind of classified them on a scale of whether they're public transit versus individual ride services like Uber and Lyft versus scheduled and flexible services. So you'll see, you know, just briefly, this is introduction to the different types of microtransit and on-demand services that could be operated and how they're classified. Next slide. The first task of this study will be looking at existing conditions. How we're going to begin this is by looking at propensity and potential throughout the region. The propensity kind of focuses on populations that need transit, low income, minority, disabled populations, to identify where that need for transit should be provided. And then we'll also look at a potential analysis, which looks at density of population and employment. This is kind of flipped from what we generally think about when we're talking about transit. For fixed route, we look at higher density, but for on-demand, we're going to be looking at lower density areas. Next, we're going to do this microtransit suitability analysis, which shows us where microtransit might be successful throughout the region at a very high level. And then we compare that to existing services to identify where areas might benefit from additional service, and, you know, just kind of design the services based off what we're hearing in existing conditions. And this task will feed into the following task.
So the one of the big tasks in this will be stakeholder and public outreach, and there'll be two different rounds of this, and they'll have two different purposes. The first round, which will be starting in October, will, on one hand, we'll have stakeholder focus groups, and those will primarily be educational in nature because you know, this is a fairly new topic and area for a lot of people. So we will be doing a little bit of education and kind of asking what people feel the gaps and the needs are, and how we can meet those. And part of that will also be the public outreach portion of this, the first step in it. We will have a presentation with a detailed survey that GRTC will host. Again, it'll emphasize education and kind of explaining the concept and the framework of microtransit. And then it'll gauge the public's travel needs and their preferences. So it'll identify some of those gaps and some of the opportunities and options for filling those gaps. And this may be a lot where the education falls in, because a lot of people might not know what the gaps actually are and what options there are to fill those. And then we will advertise all of this. We'll work with GRTC and Carrie to advertise through the website and social media. And so it will be a virtual public outreach format, but the goal is to have it sort of a presentation on demand where people can watch, and if they want to see it multiple times, more than welcome. But it'll give them an opportunity to kind of go through this project and the outreach on their own time. The second round of public outreach will be towards the beginning of next year. It will also include that another opportunity for virtual public outreach, much like round one. This time, the emphasis will be on presenting and prioritizing those recommendations. So now that we've hopefully educated everyone on what microtransit is and what those options may be, now we'll use the information that we got from round one from the stakeholders and from the public to determine what options will work best for people and have them prioritize the recommendations we make. And then at the same time, we'll have stakeholder meetings and to summarize those results. And I'll talk a little bit more about the stakeholder meetings in a couple slides later.
The third task is a best practices review. Based on what we're seeing happening around the country, we're going to do a comprehensive review of the different types of microtransit and on-demand services. This is going to be used as a tool as part of the educational campaign that Nick also mentioned, so that we can let all the stakeholders throughout the Richmond region and the public alike know what is available and how it operates. What are some of the benefits and impact of these types of services on the system? There's a lot of different use cases that could be applied, whether it's first, last mile, connecting into the GRTC system or new service areas. So we just want to use this memo to kind of educate people on the lessons learned and key takeaways on other agencies that we've seen. This will also include us identifying potential microtransit peers for the Richmond region. So just based on some of the service area characteristics, we'll choose the top 5 and get really in depth with those agencies and interview them in the next task. So we can go to the next slide. So that'll lead into our operational challenges and opportunities. And as I mentioned, this task will be focused on informational interviews. We'll interview the 5 peer agencies, focusing on major questions such as what are the benefits of microtransit service in their community? Are there particular populations that are interested in using microtransit, and just a lot of high-level questions to really get at benefits and impacts of these services in their areas. We also will meet with local service operators to understand how these services could be operated, whether you have some local providers that do have certain levels of on-demand service, so how they could be integrated, how we can all work together to create a system throughout the Richmond region that is comprehensive and useful to the public so that they can move throughout. And then the last task, which is the best task, of course, is the recommendations and next steps. As I mentioned, taking all the inputs from all the different tasks that I mentioned previously, we're going to identify zones throughout the service area, looking at origins and destinations, and where, based on that suitability analysis, where on-demand will be successful. We're going to prioritize these high-level zones that we've created based on various factors that we've found in other studies, lend themselves to microtransit services. And then the final step is designing the service. The public input will really be important here, so we understand how we design the zones, or whether it's a county-wide service versus a zonal-based service. We'll create a service and implementation plan. The service plan will also address the hours of operation. We want to make sure that we're hitting all the different time periods that people need. And we will also develop a financial plan that includes capital and operating costs so that we can move forward with implementation of pilot zones.
All right. Real quick, this will be a summary of the schedule and deliverables. and we'll have a detailed schedule in the next slide, but just as a brief overview, the first memo on the existing conditions will be sometime in the fall, as well as the best practices technical memo. I'm seeing those at the end of October, roughly. And we'll also follow that up with operational challenges technical memo. And then the financial plan will come later in the year, probably towards the end of December. So for the meetings, that round one survey, it says fall 2021. What I'm thinking is it would be more in October. We'll launch it and it would be up and running for a certain period of time, which we'll determine. At the same time, we'll be conducting agency and peer agency reviews and interviews in parallel to the public outreach process. And then we'll have that second round of survey and public outreach in the winter, around the same time we're working on the financial plan, hopefully not to conflict with any of the winter holidays. And then in early 2022, we'll be meeting with the jurisdictions in the region to discuss not just any lingering questions that may exist on what microtransit is and for how this would work, but to really get a good idea of what potential there is for implementation timelines and an overview of kind of how to move forward on the microtransit front. On the next slide, this is just a detailed schedule just for informational purposes, but as you can see, we'll be working into January. Again, we want to make sure that the meetings and outreach efforts are scheduled so they do not conflict entirely with holidays, but we'll make sure that everything is up and running for that public outreach for a longer period of time than just like it won't be like one meeting like you would traditionally have in person. This will be, like I said, an on-demand type public meeting where you could visit the website multiple times if you wish, and on your timeline. So with that, we can take any questions, or we'll turn it back over to Adrian.
So Nick and Jessica, thank you for this. I've got a list of 4 things that I'd just like to list for you. First is that the CVTA, of course, has a big investment in this. And so I assume from your last comments that it will pay attention to the partners that need something said to them and be partner specific in terms of the outlying jurisdictions that are not ready for fixed route transit. Second, and third, basically deals with the connection of potential microtransit to fixed route transit to create a regional network. So that's in 2 regards. First, to what extent can we design or should we design microtransit to connect with fixed route service in the region? And second, and I think this is a question worth asking, as you do your work, what implications and suggestions does it provide for the necessary fixed route transit to connect? That is, this may tell us something about priorities for the next fixed route work, as well as priorities for the microtransit. And then finally, what is also an extremely interesting topic is the relationship between public and private microtransit, and looking at an area like Wood Lake, for example, where the community association might decide to have microtransit to connect to a fixed route service on Hull Street, and be happy to provide their own connection, as opposed to a more generic area like parts of Powhatan or Goochland, where the public might need to be involved more directly in design. So those are the 4 that came up to me as I listened to you. I am personally really excited about this. I think this really does look at having a fully regional, thought through public transit system. So thank you both for your experience. Nick, we've been doing this stuff in various ways for a long time, and for your design. Other comments or questions?
I'll just echo what you said, Ben. I think I'm very intrigued by this. I think this is a very unique time to be studying this, based on where we are with CVTA, where we are with the bus company in the region. So I'm very interested, and we'll be following along very closely with how the study goes.
Great. Okay. Adrian, you got it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nick and Jessica. And yes, we are going to keep CVA very involved. We'll be doing an intro on the meeting on the 24th. Julie will kind of just intro the project that it's kicked off, and then we'll be doing a little bit more, letting them know as far as the outreach process and engagement project in the October meeting, telling about the surveys. So they will be very involved, and we'll meet with all the jurisdictions individually. And I'm going to jump right into the next one, which that ties directly to is the Regional Public Transportation Plan. So we also kicked off that study. That is also with Michael Baker, with Jarrett Walker, kind of a continuation of the team from last fiscal year. Kicked that off in August, and a similar approach, we are going to start scheduling with the jurisdictions to start looking at the prioritization again, kind of where we left off last time. And look at the financial analysis is where we're going to kind of spend the fall. So we will continue to come to the board with updates as we progress with that. But the microtransit study, the results that will hopefully be done by some point in the winter will also feed into the Regional Public Transportation Plan. And depending on where we are with resources at that point in time, we'll be able to come up with kind of an FY23 plan, whether it's some pilots for microtransit or some sort of enhancement or just maintenance of service. So we will stay engaged.
Thank you. So what's the due date on that? What's your calendar on that Regional Public Transportation Plan?
It's a similar timeline where we're trying to have all of the financial analysis and prioritization completed by winter, and then at that point we'll start working on the actual draft plan, because that's when the microtransit will be able to feed into it around the winter time, and have a draft plan completed hopefully by March, and then we can go back and flush it out with the jurisdictions. So it will be turned in hopefully by April or May for review. And
then gets finally approved by CVTA or RPTO?
We will still
TPO,
coordinate like we did
yeah.
last year with the MPO for
Yeah.
the legislation, but as far as the financial approval, that will come through CVTA like last time.
Okay, thank you. All right, does that do it for you? That does. Thank you, Ms. Torres. So now what do we got? Cheryl, Operations and Maintenance Report, Ms. Adams.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We will begin the operations and maintenance section with Tim Barham providing an update on our operations for the month of August. Tim.
Thanks, Cheryl. Good morning, everyone. Starting with the KPIs, and you'll see they're located on page 25 of the board packet. With the on-time performance, did go up 1 percentage point from the past month. We're now at a little over 66%. Still continuing with the initiatives that I've talked about previously. One note I do want to bring to your attention is that we did have a schedule change, our new booking, which went into effect September 12th this past week. So hopefully we will see some adjustments to those schedules that will make some positive dividends with the OTP. Lost time and absenteeism rate did go down 2 percentage points to 16.7%. The decrease was due to some operators who did return back from long-term absences and from workers' comp and so forth. And conversely, our lost trips went down as well. We're under 1,000 at 967 for the month of August. And conversely, we operated over 98% of our trips. Complaints or comments, basically they're about the same as they were from past month, with the biggest concern or complaint that came through was bus being late or didn't show. Specialized transportation, for the second month, we did have OTP under 90%. That is a concern, and we've had conversations with First Transit about what they can do to address that. So they are in the process of bringing a subcontractor on board to help with the capacity, that has been affecting the OTP on that service. And conversely, the complaints did go up as well. We had 23 for this past month, which most of the complaints were late rides. Staffing, we're at 254 full-time and 20 part-time operators. We should be somewhere at least around 280. So we're right now roughly about 26 operators short. We do have 6 operators in training that will be graduating over the next few weeks. We have a new class that'll be starting first part of October as well. We'll continue with our recruiting efforts. There were ads that started back in August, and also the other initiatives that we've set forth as well. Looking at, even had some conversations with our partners over at the different neighboring school bus operations. They're having their challenges as well with recruiting and finding operators, but we're looking for the same individuals. But one thing that we're looking at probably doing is recruiting part-time school bus operators. They're off on weekends, holidays, and evenings. So we're looking at perhaps partnering with the school systems to look at ways in which we can recruit and train school bus operators to work and help with the service on our end. So hopefully we'll get some positive dividends from that. I do want to spend just a brief moment in talking about staffing, what we've been having to deal with since the pandemic. So since March of 2020, up until August of this year, we hired 46 operators, and we had 9 classes during that period. So roughly we've had a class about every other month. Conversely, in 2019, just prior to the pandemic, we had a total of 9 classes for that year. So we were having classes about every 6 weeks. So as we went through the pandemic, we went through our challenges of trying to recruit and bring operators in, which we're still dealing with even now. But unfortunately, we weren't able to bring in people as quickly as those that were leaving. And let me give you that number right now. So during that same period, we lost 59 operators who left the company due to various reasons. About 34 of those left either through resignations or retirement. So we're losing more people than we're bringing in, which is the reason why we've been having these challenges from an operational standpoint, because our manpower needs just aren't the way where they should be. Just to give you another number with that as well, pre-pandemic, we were losing roughly about 2.4 operators per month due to whatever reason. Now we're a little under 3 operators we're losing per month. So we have more people leaving, and we've done exit interviews to see the reasons why. There are more opportunities out there. Some folks, just to be honest with you, with the current state and conditions of what we're dealing with in terms of the transportation challenges and so forth. We're looking at ways in which we can improve customer relations. So we're doing those things to try to help improve the situation. We'll go over more of that later on in this report as well. But I just wanted to kind of give you a picture as far as what we're dealing with and to kind of give you some background behind the numbers that I've been reporting every month. But unless there are any other questions, that concludes my report.
Question, if you're recruiting outside, for part-time, are they controlled by 60 hours a week or like VDOT does, or do we have that restriction that we don't drive beyond 60 hours a week?
Well, actually, it's 20 under no more than 29 hours per week. So we do have that restriction in place. And also our labor agreement also gives us a restriction as far as the number of operators versus full-time operators that we can bring in as well. We still have some wiggle room there, that we can bring in more part-time operators. But you're right, Mr. Smith, we do have an hours restriction. You know, once they get into that full-time scenario, then you're talking about the ACA and other scenarios from the benefit standpoint.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add to that, Danny, I'm not sure, but were you discussing the cap on hours, maximum number of hours they can work per week or per day?
Yes.
Okay, there are some rules around that when it comes to the trucking industry. We do not have the similar rules around that for ourselves in the contract or in legislation. We've explored that before. We do want to make sure that we don't have people driving excess hours, whether it's with ourselves, whether they're too tired to operate, or whether or not it's in combination of ourselves and the part-time people we'd be looking to bring on, and other aspects of safety. We'll talk about this a lot more later in the board meeting, some of the different activities we have to bring on supplemental drivers, how that relates to union operations, emergency operations that are within administrative control and don't have to go through negotiation because of the situation that we're in under COVID. And we'll certainly discuss that more later in the meeting.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. Yeah, the hours of service or with CDL operators are dictated by interstate, whereas our CDL operators are intrastate.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Barham. Good to hear the little uptick on-time performance. That's good work.
Thank you.
Okay, Cheryl?
Yes. Next up, we will have Emily, who will provide a ridership performance report for us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll be sharing our ridership for the month of August 2021. So total fixed route ridership, we're looking at 698,532 riders. If we're focusing in on our local fixed route, we're at 550,293 for the month of August. So comparing that to last month, we're up just about a percentage point. Comparing that to August of 2020, we're up nearly 9%. And comparing to our pre-pandemic numbers in August of 2019, we're within about 3%. And that was a very quick report, but that's all I have for you unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Okay. So this is next is Tony, correct? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct, Tony Carter.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'll be going on the safety performance report for the month of August. This is found on pages 38 through 40 of your board packet. Starting off with results for this month, external events. In the month of July, we had 28. In the month of August, we had 37. Non-preventable incidents. In the month of August, we had 23. In the month of July, we had 18. Preventable incidents. In the month of July, we had 10. In the month of August, we had 14. We remain the same with one rear end accident where a vehicle did tap the rear of the bus. We had one in August as well as one in July. Now, overall, you did see and hear an increase in the number of accidents that we had. But in breaking down the data a little bit and dived into it a little bit deeper, the type of accidents that really increased our numbers for this month were left outside mirrors, where vehicles or buses, other modes of transportation, large vehicles tap the left outside mirror of our buses. We're finding that a lot of this came from construction areas where lane reductions, things got tight, was having a lot of road construction going on downtown in the city and everything. And we're reminding operators just to be careful about those locations, be vigilant, make sure that they're slowing down as they go through. We even had one situation where we had a forklift back into the side of the bus, and this was during a construction area. So we're just dealing with a lot of stuff in those areas, and we're just reminding the operators to pay close attention to those areas to make sure that they stay vigilant, stay safe in those areas. Specialized care, passenger events, we were at 0. Traffic events, we were at 8. Preventable, we were at 5, and non-preventable were at 3. And the 5 of those incidents were minor accidents such as fixed objects with traffic signs and tree branches and things of that nature. Going forward, we're continuing to get the good feedback when we bring the operators into the training staff to review everything and make sure that they're going over the techniques when they review the footage to try to cut down on these type of accidents. If you remember in the last meeting, we did change insurance carriers. We're now part of the Virginia Transportation Liability Pool. And also you remember us discussing that Julie, Cheryl, and I had a meeting with David Harmer, which is the administrator of the Virginia Transit Liability Pool. And one of the things we were discussing was some of the needs that we needed outside of the insurance needs itself. And one of the things that we were looking for were different information on webinar sections on just overall safety and how to make the company more safe, grow a safer environment, that type of thing. And Virginia Transportation Liability Pool delivered on a webinar. Reem Lazario, you may have heard that name before. He was our safety consultant helping with us designing the agency safety plan. He gave a very good webinar to the overall pool on how to work with the agency safety plan, as well as just to try to grow a culture of overall safety within the organization. And he gave very good details on that. Also, National Transit Institute gave a wonderful course on customer service and de-escalation of activities when it comes to disruptive customers and those type of situations. And I know a lot of the transportation management, as well as supervisors and the training staff were a part of that. So those are the type of things that we continue to do just to get some ideas, get some more information on how to keep everybody as safe as possible. We continue to do the safety blitz. We continue to monitor things out on the road with the training staff, as well as the road supervisors, to make sure that the operators are maneuvering the buses as safe as possible and interacting with the customers and providing that wonderful customer service to keep everybody as safe as possible. And if there are no questions, that concludes the safety performance report for the month of August.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
And our last report will be Mr. Tony Byrd on the maintenance.
Hi, Mr. Byrd.
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the month of August, there were 5,654 miles between roll calls for that month. In July, we only had 4,651. Our PMs for the month of August was at 58%, whereas our goal is 80%. We're budgeted for 35 techs, and currently we are 11 techs short. So PMIs and state inspections are now our primary focus. We have a spare ratio of 20%, but currently 31% of fixed route and paratransits are down for service and or parts. This is up from last month, which was 21%. Service is now being impacted due to the low manpower and the ongoing unavailability of parts. GRTC continues to clean and disinfect the entire fleet daily, and our in-house bus stop power washing will start the 1st of next month. That completes the maintenance report.
So the road calls, that's when something's wrong and we have to go out to the bus.
To bring it back to repair, yes.
And we were better off this last month than before, right?
Yes, we were.
All right, thank you. Any further questions of Mr. Byrd? That's, of course, distressing about the mechanic shortage.
If I might add to that, Tony and his staff have been doing an exceptional job keeping our buses running, as the same as Tim and his staff have done an exceptional job keeping our service on the street, even though we are improving the miles between road calls. One of the things that's not in the report that needs to be in there in the future ones, Tony, I apologize, I didn't catch this, is that even though it's an improvement over last month, we are still below our KPIs on our performance of how many miles we should be. On average, I think in prior running average, 12 months running average, we tend to run closer to 7,000 miles between. So when you see that we're at 4,000 or 5,000 miles below between road calls, we are still significantly below our KPI and where we normally run. when we have our full complement of mechanics.
All right, thank you very much, and thanks, Mr. Byrd, for your work during this time. It's
Welcome.
I know it's been difficult, and we really appreciate it. Okay, Cheryl, is that it?
Yes, sir. That is it for the operations and maintenance report. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Zinzarella.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Starting on slide 42 of our deck, I'm going over to slide 43, which is the source of funds. I'm presenting the financial data for the 1 month ended July 31st of 2021. So this is the first month of our fiscal 22. So we basically are closing the month of July concurrent with August. August is not done yet. So when you first look at this schedule here, we're seeing our source of funds. We have an unfavorable revenue variance about 1.249 million. And that's basically a direct result of the federal funds of 1.1 million. We did not submit any of our federal reimbursements during the month of July's close. We're doing both of them concurrently in the month of August.
John, were you planning on sharing your screen, or we're just going to run this thing straight out? There we are.
There he goes. Sorry, a technical glitch here on my end. I got to hit the button. So on 43, sorry. So down on the lower right, you see the unfavorable variance of 1.249 million, and that's more of a dysfunction of the federal funds. As we were closing the July and August months concurrently, we're putting the reimbursements into the FTA for both the CARES Act and any 5307 money cumulative for the months of July and August, which will basically almost bring us back to on budget for the revenues. Just there was a lot of conflicting activities during the month of July with the year-end audit, bringing on board the Cvta, the revenue stream, and so forth, so that we wanted to get a good understanding of how the expenses were flowing through, and the process was adjusted a little bit. So we figured we'd close the 2 months concurrently. So in the October meeting, you'll see that this revenue variance will be diminished. Moving on to slide 44, this is basically the statistical and bar chart of the previous slide. Slide 45, this is the eye chart, but we go over to slides anywhere 46 to 55. So looking at it in totality of the operating expenses, sliding down to the bottom of slide 47, you can see that the operating expenses for the month of July were favorable to budget by $267,540. And as this being 1 month, we're also testing the calendarization that we put in and looking to make sure it's proprietary. So I really don't take a lot of stock in 1 month variances because it's one data point. But what we see here, and the explanation is that for the first time, we have labor is unfavorable in the totality by $71,826. And that's more of a function of the fringe benefit line. As you can see down here, the retirement costs in the pension plan, unfavorable 144. That's a byproduct of the appreciation bonus that was paid to our operators in the first week of July. We accrued the actual bonus for the wages portions in fiscal 2021. However, the company portion of the pension match that the GRTC provides on the wages for both the transportation and operators and maintenance folks that are in the collective bargaining unit, that is hitting here in the month of July, which is generating that variance. It will, as I was looking at it, the calendarization could have been done on the budget, done a little bit better. This will start to mitigate. In August, the maintenance one goes positive, and the negative variance starts to go down, and will go down over time. So I'm not really concerned about that. Looking through the rest of the 1 month, we're favorable in professional and technical services. Primarily, it's just some timing, and that's basically the explanation is the timing of how some of the expenses versus the assumption of how we calendarize them in the budget. Materials and supplies consumed last year, this was very unfavorable. We're a little bit favorable through the 1 month. It's basically on the fuels and lubricant and tires lines, but what's 1 month of activity, we're just watching it, and we don't know any trends, positive or negative long term yet. So don't want to spend a lot of time on the individual variances. It's 1 month. Moving over to slide slide 50, slides 56 through 58. This is the narrative portion. As you can see from the revenue miles versus and the operating expense for revenue mile, we're very much pretty close to budget, but it's 1 month data point. We'll just continue to watch it over the upcoming months. As Tim had indicated, one of the driving forces, we are still favorable on headcount relative to the budget in both the equipment and facility maintenance as well as transportation, and and in the insurance and safety and the general administrative, total of 26 vacant positions. As you can see, overtime is you can see some of the impact of it, almost 10%, a little under 10% in transportation for the month, and about 4 to 5% overtime rate in maintenance, which is kind of compensating a little bit, but also is a more expensive mode to achieve that work. Sliding over to slide 59, which is statement of income, and this is I want to highlight down here, and this is what I was talking about. If you look down for the month and year to date, obviously 1 month, but the change in net position, there was a deficit of $674,000. And that, in essence, as you can see up here, is basically the CARES Act. CARES Act budget was $694,000. So when we make that adjustment in August, that we'll be basically at break even as we anticipated. So not a lot of concerns. It's just some of the ins and outs and some minor timing difference at this point, which we're going to challenge our calendarization a little bit and also do a little bit more analysis. Moving over to slide 60 on the balance sheet. Obviously 1 month cash position is up from the year end from June 30th, and this is a function of the funding of Cvta for the first quarter of 2022, the cash coming in. Receivable balance is up slightly, and this is just in timing as we invoiced City of Richmond and Henrico County on a quarterly basis. Chesterfield's being invoiced on a monthly basis. The receivable balance is that we received the payments from the City of Richmond in August, so it was an outstanding receivable at the end of July, as well as Henrico, and Chesterfield is still is outstanding from their monthly invoice. Not a lot of concerns there, but obviously it's functioning tandem with our cash flow analysis, kind of where we expect it to be. Sliding over to slide 61 on our cash flow, as I indicated, the ending balance at the end of July is $2.7 million. You can see at the bottom of the second column, and that was the large improvement over the previous month end was due to the funding of Cvta. We brought in $4.74 million for the Q1 funding, and you notice that the balances we're expected to increase at the end of August as Richmond and Henrico and Chesterfield receivables are to be collected, as well as the FTA reimbursements for July and August, or actually would be in September, those would be, but improved. So then we'll go back. We expect our cash flow to decrease at the end of the quarter and then increase again as we fund for the second quarter through Cvta. And the last slide I want to go through is kind of the progress slide. This is the top of this is this is kind of a rolling slide. This is on slide 62. This is a Cvta. I kind of keep a rolling slide of our quarterly report. So our next report is due on November 15th. That will be for the quarter ending September 30th. But just to walk through this past Friday is when I cut the slide. We received our month of June distribution of $2.396 million. Wanted to call out on Monday, the 20th, yesterday, we received the July and June local jurisdiction collection, which is only $1.6 million. We had some questions on that. That was just due to the sales and tax receipts. The state made an adjustment for accelerated tax payments, which kind of lowered the amount by about $700,000 from what we were anticipating. But we were assured that due to Cvta being new, that this will be vetted out, and we should, after they analyze the quarterly submission that the accelerated sales and use taxpayers make, and we should see any difference come back in our month of November. And also just for the receipts of August and July, $2.344 million was just being circulated. So we're anticipating another $3.98 million in receipts coming in by the end of this week. And with the investment performance, you can see that the interest earned and the unrealized gains for the months of July and August is around $27,000. So probably figuring another $10,000 in return on top of this. We're forecasting to come out of the quarter around $17.76 million. And as you can see in here, that reflects our drawing of $4.925 million for operating and capital expenses the first quarter. And we had one expense related to Micro Baker, and we have another one that's been paid in September. So as you can see here, the majority of these funds are invested in the LGIP extended maturity, and we keep a small balance in Wells Fargo just to handle the operating expenses associated with the regional public transportation plan prep, as well as the on-demand study. So with that, I will conclude my remarks, and I'll field any questions.
So John or Julie, looking at the Cvta funds at the end, it's, we're holding a bunch of these, right? Because we can't spend them yet.
Well, what we're doing now is there was roughly $20.4 million that was collected through the end of the fiscal 2021 year, and that was our earmark for our fiscal 22. So we're bringing in, $4.9 million. So theoretically, there's a little under $15 million remaining to come back out to fund the balance of fiscal year 22. So this 2.396 and then the other $3.9 million that is coming in September, that's going for fiscal 23. So what I do is I kind of separate them down here in the composition. I have the rolling balance for the fiscal 21 public transportation plan, which when we're finalized with that, we can repurpose that into other. And then I'm starting to on a quarterly basis fund the fiscal 22 regional public transportation plan, and then the fiscal 22 regional on-demand study. Those were each $200,000. So I'm leaving those in the Wells Fargo account as we have to pay bills when they come in. And the balance is as soon as we don't need it, as soon as the money comes in and we don't need it for the operations, I move it over to LGIP extended maturity to earn probably upwards of anywhere from 17 to 20 basis points.
Good, thank you. Any further questions of John on this report? Thank you, sir. Tanya.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This month's report can be found on pages 63 and 64 of your board packet. It will be brief, as there were no procurements between meetings requiring the board chair's signature. Additionally, no projects have been added to this month's upcoming procurements list, but staff has made some budget adjustments to some of the projects during the planning phase. The Brt Expansion Study budget has been adjusted from $200,000 to $1,030,000. The dedicated lane study has moved from to be determined to $460,000. The facilities master plan project is now $880,000 from $300,000. And the neighborhood transfer center studies budget has decreased slightly from $200,000 to $180,000. I have no other updates at this time.
So give me a quick statement on those two large expansions. The Brt expansion study went from a couple 100,000 to $1 million.
I'm going to have to lean on Adrian for this.
Yes, those are actually the amounts we applied for with the GRTC application. So we were just updating it with our internal documents.
And this comes from
the same numbers.
Is this federal money?
It's a combination of federal, state, and local.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you.
So let's see, John, you gotta tell us about something we need to do an action on here.
All right, so I'm sharing my screen, and so this is on slide 65, I believe, of the package. And basically, as we had briefed it last month, we had the preliminary financial results for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. The operating revenues exceeded the actual operating expenses by a little over $500,000. So what GRTC management is seeking is to designate this fiscal year 2021 favorable fund balance to supplement the adopted fiscal 22 operating budget as an addition, and that we're seeking that the board of directors authorize the CEO, the GRTC CEO, to include in the fiscal 21, to include the fiscal year 2021 favorable fund balance as an additional funding source in our adopted fiscal 2022 operating budget. And GRTC management will report back to the board of directors the proposed programs that are to be funded with the fiscal year 2021 favorable fund balance at a future meeting prior to expending it.
So let me just understand that last sentence. That means that that will be reported to us. We will not be asked to approve those further programs. Is that correct?
That's
Not exactly. And it is not within the discretion of management to authorize the expense of that level of funding. It will show as a favorable balance. We will make recommendations to the board, and the board will approve.
All righty, thank you. So could I have a motion to approve this recommendation with the understanding? Yeah, second, please.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed? It is passed. Thank you very much, Mr. Zinzarella. Thank you. Nice to have a favorable balance. Julie, CEO's report.
Yes, sir. Before I start on the CEO's report, I'd love to note that we have a major accomplishment this board meeting, something I'm not sure that we've seen in my tenure here. I will be here 2 years, starting in a few days, and we have completed the majority of the board action items and discussion items within an hour of start. That is something to celebrate.
It's noticeable.
With that, I have to, the bad news is that the CEO's report will be a little bit longer and have more discussion in it than normal. So there's always a balance there. The first thing on the CEO's report, I did break it down into 4 parts. The first part was to acknowledge that President Biden has stated, if you have been watching the news, that there will be a vaccine mandate for all employers who have greater than 100 employees. He's directed Occupational Safety Health Administration to come up with temporary standards on how that would be applied. We are watching that very carefully, but we expect that unless there are some court rulings to overturn that, we will have a vaccine mandate at GRTC within the coming weeks. I think that's really relevant to note as we talk about the next part of the conversation about the considerations of our staffing and winter adjustment, is to understand that when you do mandate that people do certain activities, there are implications and resistance to it as well as acceptance. So I put that forward so that no one is surprised when our policies change to require a vaccine based on the president's mandate. With that, I'll go into my second item, which we started talking about. I was going to bring it forward to the board with a slide presentation. However, as I developed the slides, I realized that it was so many words, it'd be easier to have a discussion rather than to have slides with lots and lots of words. So I'll start with a lot of what we heard at the meeting today talked about where staffing was for operators and mechanics and what that was impacting us in our ability to put out service. To start, we began in 2020 when you brought me on 2 years ago in a very favorable position compared to transit across the country. Yeah, we had some shortages when I got here. We were probably down about 10 or 12 operators. We were down a mechanic or two, but overall, service was in a very good position. We were growing and we were preparing our class sizes to be double digits for more operators, recruiting for mechanics. And when you compare that to what was going on across the country with transit, we were shown as award-winning and a solid agency for growth in ridership, growth in service, growth in funding, growth in staff, and our meeting our objectives to really become that regional network we've been talking about since 2018 with BRT and the service redesign. So when COVID hit, we were in a very good position as an agency and as a region providing service to our riders. We were able to very quickly pivot our resources and our staffing to come up with some key priorities. Those priorities, you might remember, but I'll bring them up again, were to, one, make sure that we protected the workforce. That meant protecting their health as well as protecting their jobs. It meant protecting the jobs of people who worked here at GRTC, as well as the jobs of the essential workforce who were using transit. That was our number one priority. Once we established that, our second priority was to make sure that the resources that we had available to us were deployed for the maximum benefit of maintaining our essential service where we have high ridership. We found our data showed that, yes, transit ridership dropped 90 to 95% nationwide. However, that's a slight mischaracterization. What we actually found is that transit dropped 90 to 95% nationwide on express routes and commuter routes, which is a very, very small portion of our market segment. Here in GRTC, our local bus service only dropped between May of 2020 or March of 2020 when COVID hit to May of 2020 when we were really hitting that first impact of COVID. We dropped about 20 to 30%. However, by the time the testing came out in July of 2020, we had rebounded significantly. And right now, with vaccines out, our local bus service, as you saw earlier in this report, is only about 3% less than it was pre-COVID. The reason we've been able to maintain this service and maintain our reliability as much as it is because of our starting strength. That's the good news. And I want to make sure that we all understand that this agency and this board and our GRTC family have really come together through this. Now, the challenging news is, as Tim reported and as Tony reported, that we have been managing a reduction of workforce throughout COVID. People have left the workforce to go take care of family members. People have had a short-term or long-term disability where they're taking care of their own care and they can't come to work to protect themselves from COVID. Our recruitment has slowed, again, as the workforce across the country and regionally, we're not able to attract as many. We've talked about this through the last year, and we've put a lot of measures in place to try and buffer against this slow decline of our staffing. And one of the first things we did, if you remember back in April of 2020, is we realigned our service. We used paratransit drivers to help with our express services. We greatly reduced express services. We cut some of the services that we have. Rob, can you help with the muting, please? Thank you. We cut some of or I shouldn't say cut, but we reduced and we realigned some of our low-performing routes where we had almost no ridership, and we put our resources on those routes where we had very, very high ridership. And we made some very strategic choices where transit agencies across the country also were looking to limit the number of passengers on a bus, limit the number of seats available, and reduce their workforce. We chose a different strategy. We chose to go zero fares, protect our operators, protect our workforce, and continue to allow people to ride even though they might have excess higher amounts of people on a bus than we would have liked under COVID conditions. We gave them masks, we gave them hand sanitizers, we cleaned the buses, and people had the choice, as it was, to get on the bus or to find another method, and then, of course, to use the hand sanitizer and the mask to protect themselves. It kept our ridership high, it kept our service and our communities protected, and it served our mission of protecting our workforce. We put out a marketing effort to be able to recruit more and more operators. And I believe that we've seen some of our class sizes increase above what class sizes in other transit agencies have seen because of our marketing efforts. But they haven't been as high as we'd like because we found some barriers to people coming into GRTC. One of those barriers was DMV. DMV has worked with us very, very closely to help us get the approvals on site. And those approvals on site to, I believe that we have a new member joining us. The approvals that we have now for DMV that we didn't have before is that when someone who applied didn't have a CDL permit, they didn't have their learners, they had to go to DMV and test for that. And so we lost many applicants because of the delays in DMV as they were closing and making appointments. Sometimes it would take people months to study for and take their permit. Also, once they were here in testing, there needed to be additional testing for their final license. We had some testing approval, but the final license had to be done with DMV. Over the course of 2020, working with DMV and the state, we now have the capacity in-house to both test people for their learners as well as test people for their final. So all testing for people's CDL can be done by GRTC, eliminating a barrier to hiring that we experience. So should be able to accelerate our classes and our testing, have larger class sizes, and help improve our recruitment through that process. So we're very, very excited about that. We've done similar things with the mechanics. We used to have an apprentice program. We're bringing that apprentice program back with on-site classrooms that have a lot of training for the CDL as well as hands-on, so we can apprentice people into our mechanics program, which is very exciting. Some of the other issues that, as Tim reported, that we had that slow decline of our staffing. We have used over the course of the year, besides our paratransit staff, to supplement when we've had the vaccine vans and the voter shuttles, and we've had other needs. We've used Userve, we've used partnerships with Uber and Lyft to provide supplemental services in the evenings and weekends when we've had to cut service short because of a shortage of operators, because of conditions on the street and states of emergency. We have used these supplemental services, and we look forward to the partnership supporting us again as we move forward into the winter. We also have a very strong partnership with the city of Richmond, which we greatly appreciate the discussions we've been having them with recently on a possible partnership about using some of their mechanics part-time to help supplement our services and to look for other creative ways to keep service on the street. We are also looking at a recruitment and hiring bonuses for new operators and mechanics. We're announcing this today. We put it into place as of yesterday. Those recruitment bonuses for new hires will equate to approximately $5,000 for new operators and $8,500 for new mechanics to be paid out over the course of a year to 2 years as they to help not only recruit but retain them. I think we're also looking at messaging better the benefits of being a member of the GRTC staff. While we have beautiful recruitment videos, and I think people are very excited, and we get a lot of interest when people see those advertisements, they might not realize what that really means long-term to come into the GRTC family. And so we're going to be making a much stronger push to help people understand that when they become a member of the GRTC family, when they become an operator here, right now top pay is around $26 an hour. But that's not where the story ends. They can make that top pay within 2 years of working for us. They get 11 paid holidays, 12 paid sick days, 1 to 6 weeks of paid vacation, 85% of their health care premiums, plus an additional 12 to 15% of pension added on top. Our average operator, our operators who are making just the minimum salary and working a normal number of hours, makes over $50,000 a year. most operators, because the overtime benefits that they can get for time and a half, typically make closer to $70,000 a year. And we have operators who put in a significant amount of overtime, not too much because of safety, but because they know that their own limitations and their dedication to service. We have some operators who put in enough overtime that they make over $100,000 a year. These aren't small numbers. These are amazing numbers that, when you consider the requirements they have to come in, it means that we open up opportunities to our entire community to have a path to a good career. So all those are good things. And there's even more that I haven't mentioned. I have an arm's length list just to make sure I got it. We have the signing bonuses, the marketing and recruitment, reaching out to partners, the vocational technical, our university, our college partners, our workforce development partners across the region to help recruit people in, the better messaging, the overtime pay, the appreciation pay that we're giving to help operators who are already here also get bonuses to show that when they're dedicated to working through COVID, through BLM protests, through states of emergency such as the election and weather, that we are giving them supplemental pay to appreciate their time here and to help with that retention. That we are also working with using our paratransit operators and our supplemental drivers, such as our private agencies and other public agencies, to support the on-site DMV testing, the permitting, the new mechanic apprenticeship program. We're looking at a small vehicle program that would allow non-CDL drivers to operate small vehicles on routes around the region, and work with our universities and our local partners to recruit non-CDL workforce to help with that as well. And we're also working to manage our own service. As I said, we cut, or I should say adjusted service in April of last year. We did it again this September, and while most people will not see the difference in impact of our September service, it actually did have a significant impact in creating more opportunities for using our workforce that we have available and maintaining our frequencies. Even though we have less workforce, we're maintaining the frequencies. And the way we've done that is because of zero fares. Zero fares, when you collect fares normally, it slows down your service because you have to wait at each transit stop while people pay. We adjusted our service in September knowing that we'll be zero fares for at least the rest of this fiscal year by reducing and shaving that time off of our service, reducing some of those layover times. We were able to put out the same level of service almost exactly with fewer operators. So that adjustment is not being felt, that burden is not being felt by our riders. All that's to say that the strength of our position in early 2020 pre-COVID has kept us strong to date. The challenge that we have is we need to get this messaging out that depending on how fall goes, we may need to look at some more adjustments in December. We hope that's not the case. We're preparing for it just in case, because that's what we need to do to make sure people have rides in December. But it's incumbent upon us to get the word out, to let people know the opportunity here, to keep putting out opportunities to be part of our family and to put that service on the street. Some of the issues that we're considering impacting us further over the fall. One, the vaccine mandate. We have 70% of our staff, essential staff and others that are vaccinated or have reported vaccinated. When the vaccine mandate comes, anecdotally, what we've seen across the country is that there are people who quit their employers rather than take the vaccine. While we are treading water now, we're making service now, we're missing trips some, and if we lose those operators, again, we will have trouble making service. We also know that we have some retirements coming up. We have operators who work for us 30 and 40 years, which is amazing. But they're tired and they're ready to retire, and justly so. When you work with us for 40 years, it's time to retire, and it's not a matter of making more money. It's a matter of the quality of life moving on. And so we expect to see around 7 retirements this fall. So there's another group of people. And we also look to see that as the Delta variant is hitting us hard, we continue to have people call in sick who are catching COVID. Now, we're not reporting it out publicly as much as we were before, because honestly, the people who are catching COVID here at GRTC aren't catching COVID here at GRTC. They're catching it at home. from their family members. They're catching it from children who are going to school. They're catching it in the community. They're not catching it from each other. They're not catching it here. Regardless, it keeps them from working. They must stay home to take care of their children, to take care of themselves, to take care of their parents. And that reduces our workforce as well. So we continue to have those. And as Delta variant is hitting us harder, we are seeing those impacts here. And we know that going into December and January last year, with the holidays, we saw a peak in COVID infections. It's not unreasonable to expect that we will see that again this year because of the issues with vaccinations, unless the tide changes. So while we are treading water and we have a strong position, with the upcoming factors in September, October, November, and December, I am raising the yellow flag that if we are unable to continue to manage these from a position of strength, we might see some more service cuts in December, and able to make sure that our service maintains its reliability for what we have on the street. I want to make sure that people understand that any service cuts or service adjustments or realignments we do put into place will focus on keeping maximum service on the highest ridership areas, and that we will look to use our supplemental partners to make sure that we have service throughout the system and that everyone has some level of service to get there, and that we work with van pools, car pools, Ubers, small vehicle drivers, the mechanics who keep our fleet in order to keep service going. So it's a matter of raising awareness now and having a discussion about it now so that we're prepared should we continue to see this loss, net loss of staffing over the next coming months. I believe I've hit all of my talking points, and I wanted to stop there for this point before I have the rest of the CEO reports, in case you wanted to discuss any of these or have any dialogue regarding our operator and our mechanic shortfall.
I guess, Julie, I'll just mention that the irony is not lost on me that for decades, our expansion was hamstrung by our availability of funds. And as soon as we secure a stable resource, now that our expansion is limited by our people. So I definitely understand it. I know that especially with CDL drivers, that industry is hit really hard. As a parent in the Chesterfield County school system, I definitely understand the struggles that they're having hiring school bus drivers, and our industry in general is just really hit hard by the lack of staffing. So I understand it. I hope that there's some type of answer in microtransit. That study that we're performing right now is at the most opportune time. If we can figure out how we can solve that piece of the puzzle with our additional resources and our additional funding that we have, it certainly would be good. But it's a very tough piece to be in. And like I said, I definitely understand the irony of trying to figure out how to expand our system now that we look at a different resource problem, a people resource issue.
So Ian, we have a good training program and a great salary thing coming up. And, you don't have to hustle for every new job. Once you get it, you can, get great benefits and overtime.
Absolutely. Now, I encourage anybody that is considering getting a CDL or considering this type of career to really look hard at GRTC. It is a great family atmosphere, and it's a very good company to work for. You can look at all the internal promotions that Julie has done recently. It's definitely a place to grow.
One thing we're seeing is that CDL is the MBA of the mid-90s right now. And I've even gotten reports that in certain states, supply line folks are actually, hiring people on a very temporary basis at double what they could make doing other things, and the people are possibly calling in sick or maybe taking some vacation time not previously scheduled to go and work temporarily for some of these other areas. There are two things. One, I hope it's not happening here. But on the other hand, if it's not, that means it will. And that means, we may see even more of a struggle going forward. I have friends who are in the the spirits industry, and they're just talking about how you have to be bonded to do that, and people are getting like bonded overnight in some other states so that they can move, you know, move spirits, which, you know, America has its priorities. So, you know, over people. So, I mean, so if this is something that's happening here, at least we've seen the effect of it. If it's not happening, then we've got to get ready. Because I'm hearing numbers, you know, I'm hearing numbers like, you know, $40, $60 an hour for people to do this on a temporary basis. So this is indeed a crisis. I can't imagine having handled it and better than we have, and being more prepared. So hopefully what we're gonna see is that people will recognize, you know, for the long term, for stability, sustainability, GRTC is a great place to work. And just like everything else, you know, you get out of it what you put into it, and we'll get those folks who, you know, are as dedicated as the people we have now. So, you know, tough times, but I'm confident with the team we have managing
it. Other comments? Thank you for that. And Ian, thank you. I intend, as long as I'm on this board, to make sure that GRTC is fully competitive, that it offers the best opportunity in the region for this kind of work, that it's a good place to work, and that the people who work here are fully appreciated and well compensated. And I know that that's the intention of our management. It is a good place, and it's a good opportunity. And I believe that we are playing the long game here. And I believe, and if you get a job here, you get your health insurance, you get your retirement, and you get some real promise, and you get a really significant occupation. This is, our folks are doing a real service for the entire community, and obviously not just driving vehicles, but basically supporting the whole social health of the community, and they're extraordinary, and we're looking for lots more of them as we go forward. And it's important to know too, just so everybody gets this clear, that although there's some wild bonuses going around, and of course, things like school bus drivers, we've got to help folks get in there, but those jobs are not competitive in terms of long-term or full service employment compared to what you get when you work for GRTC. This is a full-time job with overtime and full benefits, and it does take training and stability to be here effectively. Further comments?
And I'd just like to also applaud Julie and the staff for how much they've done. If you look back, today's the 18-month real anniversary of the pandemic starting. And over that 18 months, we've done everything possible to keep service regular. And just now we're looking at potential cutbacks. If you look at sister companies throughout Virginia and throughout the nation, they've cut back a lot sooner. So we have really done a lot at GRTC to figure out how we can keep the buses running on schedule, so that people can get to the places that they need to be. So we've done so much over the past 18 months, from Julie all the way down to the operators and to the mechanics. Just wanted to say how much I appreciate everything that you've looked at and everything you've done.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Julie, you got another set here.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
These are very short. The shareholders meeting was scheduled, or tentatively was planning to be scheduled for October 20th. However, I have received informal notice that we might need to adjust that, so I will provide more information when I have that. Regardless, though, according to our bylaws, the October board meeting for the GRTC board is not the third, but the fourth week in October every year. So to remind everyone to adjust your calendars, that the October board meeting will be October 26th of 2021, and we'll make sure that all of our public announcements reflect that. And Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if there are no other questions or comments, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And I certainly agree with what Ian is saying. I mean, we've had agencies that as far back as a year ago, if it cut their service by 25%. This is and we intend to make sure everybody can get to work, everybody can get where they need to get. If Ian and I both can drive, if we have to pick up some folks, we'll even think about that. Come to work for GRTC. We need you to drive for us. We need you to get your mechanic skills and fix and keep these buses operational and effective. We intend to compensate you well, and we just love to have you be a part of this family as we go forward. And we'll do everything we can to support you, to train you well, and to make you glad that you took that choice. And that's what I have to say. I am really proud of this community and the work you guys are doing. Are there other comments from board members?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Eldridge, good.
Yeah, I finally got in. I'm on my cell phone. Understand that my Rob, that my hard drive is maybe shot.
Okay.
But anyway, I've been listening.
Would you like to say anything, Eldridge, other than that?
No, not at this time. I think everything
Yeah.
that was discussed, I'm in agreement with. That's about it.
Okay. All right. Is there any further business that anyone has to offer or ask for? If not, I'd like to point out that it's 9:36 and congratulate everyone on the success of this meeting. And we look forward to seeing you the 4th week in October. Okay. The meeting is adjourned.